When a highly charming, incredibly powerful gospel vocalist slowly stepped onto the massive, brightly lit television stage, the massive global audience completely expected a traditional, heavy vocal performance. Instead, Ashford Sanders completely, violently unleashed an absolute terrifying psychological masterclass. By heavily, strategically weaponizing the incredibly fragile, deeply melancholic pop anthem originally popularized by the massive global icon Billie Eilish, he actively executed a deeply calculated acoustic manipulation. He did not simply sing a popular song. He entirely, actively summoned a deeply terrifying psychological weapon that completely paralyzed the massive celebrity judging panel and brought the entire global theater to tears. Today, we are completely ripping open the highly complex forensic psychology behind this deeply calculated audition, heavily exposing the brilliant mental manipulation. The unexpected acoustic contrast. The absolutely most deeply terrifying psychological weapon actively deployed on that massive television stage was the complete violent subversion of absolute human expectation. When a deeply seasoned, incredibly powerful gospel vocalist slowly steps directly into the blinding global spotlight, the entire massive theater aggressively prepares for a highly explosive, incredibly loud traditional musical performance.
However, by actively choosing a deeply fragile, incredibly soft pop ballad, originally heavily popularized by the massive global icon Billie Eilish, he completely, violently shattered the massive collective assumption of the entire terrified audience. This incredibly highly calculated visual and auditory contrast fundamentally creates a massive psychological short circuit entirely directly within the human brain. The massive celebrity judges were completely, absolutely, entirely stripped of their massive usual critical defenses before he even finished singing his very first deeply emotional acoustic phrase. The deconstruction of gospel power. To completely, absolutely, deeply understand the massive, terrifying brilliance of his highly specific acoustic strategy, we absolutely must strictly analyze what he completely, deliberately chose to completely actively avoid doing. A highly seasoned, incredibly elite traditional gospel singer is completely, entirely biologically equipped to heavily aggressively obliterate a massive theater, entirely utilizing incredibly complex, heavily powerful loud vocal acrobatics. Instead, he completely, aggressively, actively chose to entirely violently deconstruct his massive biological vocal power, heavily stripping away every single massive traditional gospel ornament.
By actively, heavily, severely restraining his incredibly massive, deeply powerful acoustic capabilities, he violently forced the massive global audience to completely, deeply, intensely lean heavily entirely forward, actively begging for absolutely every single softly spoken, fragile melodic syllable. The weaponization of melancholy. The highly specific track, What Was I Made For, is completely, absolutely not just a simple, standard, everyday melancholic pop song. It is a massive, incredibly heavy, deeply existential psychological weapon, completely soaked in profound human grief. By entirely, actively, heavily choosing to completely, aggressively channel this massive, specific, terrifying existential sorrow through his incredibly, deeply rich, heavily textured masculine vocal cords, he completely, violently manufactured a deeply, entirely, completely new emotional frequency. This incredibly massive, entirely terrifying acoustic manipulation completely, heavily, aggressively, violently paralyzed the entire massive global television theater, heavily forcing completely innocent, absolutely unsuspecting human beings to directly, deeply, completely confront their own massive, terrifying, deep internal existential fears, completely live on a massive global television broadcasting network platform, flawlessly. The destruction of Simon Cowell.
Simon Cowell has completely, heavily, actively spent incredibly long, massively, entirely exhausting multiple decades, heavily, entirely, aggressively constructing a massive, terrifying psychological fortress, completely, actively, heavily designed to absolutely, violently, aggressively intimidate completely inexperienced, highly fragile amateur musicians. However, this deeply specific, entirely highly fragile melodic acoustic weapon completely actively bypassed his massive, heavy psychological armor entirely entirely effortlessly. When you completely, actively, aggressively deliver highly intense, deeply raw human vulnerability completely, perfectly, directly wrapped in an incredibly massive, highly elite professional vocal zone, you completely, violently, entirely disable the massive, heavy, critical, analytical portion of his highly experienced, massive brain. The terrifying result was completely, absolutely, clearly visible, as the highly famous judge was left completely speechless. The massive global cultural trap. We absolutely must completely, deeply, strictly, carefully analyze the incredibly massive, highly calculated cultural mathematics heavily actively driving this completely terrifying acoustic television operation. The original massive song entirely, naturally, deeply, inherently possesses an incredibly massive, completely heavy global emotional weight, entirely, directly, permanently attached to its highly famous original creator.
By completely, aggressively, actively, successfully, heavily targeting this incredibly specific, highly famous, massive cultural milestone, he completely, violently, instantly, entirely hijacked the deeply massive, heavily intense emotional connection that millions of completely innocent global listeners already actively, deeply possess. He completely, actively, heavily, aggressively utilized her massive global psychological influence as a completely, entirely, highly massive, completely free, deeply, incredibly powerful acoustic weapon. Vocal restraint as a lethal weapon. The incredibly massive, completely terrifying, deeply hidden secret entirely, completely driving this highly intense psychological acoustic manipulation is the completely masterful, highly absolute, flawless utilization of intense vocal restraint. In the highly complex, entirely deeply competitive, massive reality television industry, completely heavily inexperienced amateurs completely violently, aggressively, frequently attempt to actively scream incredibly loudly to successfully, instantly, heavily, artificially, quickly capture massive global attention. He completely, actively, aggressively, violently, entirely reversed this deeply tired, massive standard psychological television formula completely, perfectly, entirely successfully.
By deliberately, actively, heavily, fiercely refusing to entirely, completely release his full, massive, terrifying acoustic volume, he completely, successfully, violently built an incredibly massive, deeply, completely, highly unbearable emotional tension. Mastering the acoustic silence. The absolute most completely, profoundly, heavily terrifying, highly elite acoustic maneuver, completely, actively, perfectly executed during this deeply massive television operation, completely, entirely, successfully, fundamentally happened, entirely, deeply, directly, entirely within the absolute, complete, total, heavy silence. He completely, actively, successfully, aggressively, heavily utilized the incredibly massive, completely terrifying, highly deep negative space actively located between every single incredibly heavily fragile musical note to completely, violently, aggressively, actively, deeply, heavily, permanently suffocate the massive global television audience. In the massive, highly complex forensic science of advanced performance psychology, entirely, actively, completely, deliberately mastering absolute, complete, total acoustic silence is the ultimate, massive, undeniable, absolute, completely, highly, absolute, definitive, undeniable, completely, entirely, heavily elite signature. The devastating mirror effect. By completely, actively, aggressively, flawlessly delivering incredibly, deeply massive, entirely, highly profound existential sorrow, entirely, completely, safely, through an incredibly warm, deeply massive, highly comforting professional acoustic tone, he successfully, violently created a massive, terrifying psychological emotional mirror. The highly massive, completely, incredibly terrified celebrity judging panel completely, entirely, absolutely stopped critically evaluating a standard television vocal performance, and completely, heavily, aggressively, entirely, successfully began deeply, intensely, actively, heavily, violently, heavily, absolutely, perfectly reflecting entirely, completely, entirely, directly upon their own incredibly, deeply massive, entirely, completely, highly private, personal, human, emotional pain. This highly intense, completely massive, absolute, undeniable psychological emotional manipulation fundamentally, actively, absolutely, heavily, completely guaranteed his massive television victory. The social media viral mathematics. The incredibly deeply massive, entirely completely terrified, brilliant acoustic strategy was completely entirely mathematically heavily highly carefully calculated to absolutely violently completely aggressively heavily entirely permanently dominate the massive highly complex global internet social media algorithms.
The incredibly massive, deeply heavy, completely entirely highly striking visual contrast of a large masculine gospel singer completely actively flawlessly delivering a deeply massive, incredibly highly feminine pop ballad is absolute completely entirely pure massive, deeply heavily powerful digital viral gold. This completely entirely highly calculated, deeply massive emotional juxtaposition completely aggressively violently successfully forces millions of completely deeply highly mesmerized global internet users to actively, completely, repeatedly, entirely, massively watch the deeply, highly terrifying acoustic psychological transformation. The ultimate television masterclass. The absolute, completely, deeply, final, highly, incredibly massive, terrifying, entirely complete psychological masterstroke is the complete, absolute, entirely permanent, total creation of a massive, deeply viral, entirely global television cultural myth. This completely, entirely, deeply, highly specific acoustic television operation absolutely entirely was not a completely, entirely, completely massive accidental emotional miracle magically caught on a massive global television camera. It was a completely, actively, heavily, rigorously, meticulously, mathematically, entirely, perfectly, heavily calculated psychological acoustic masterclass, entirely, completely, heavily, flawlessly executed by a highly, deeply seasoned, elite professional television veteran.
He completely, violently, heavily, entirely, absolutely, perfectly played the entire massive corporate television industry completely, entirely, highly, perfectly, directly, completely, exactly like a beautiful acoustic instrument.